Please.
Gosh.
Vanessa, you have
nice.
some fans here and admirers, clearly. Thank you.
That was very nice.
Good. Well, that gets us off to a good, relaxed start. Today we're in good company. Vanessa, for me this is a wonderful treat. I've been kind of obsessed with this film, Blow Up, ever since I saw it, which was for the first time in 1967.
Where did you first see it?
Down in Brighton, my hometown of Brighton. I saw it as an 18-year-old, and it's been with me in some ways or other ever since. We talked briefly beforehand, and I told you I'd worked making an exhibition devoted to Blow Up 10 years ago, and a book ensued with both projects with David Alan Mellor, who's here this evening and who you met earlier. Yeah. I resisted asking you questions when we met a little earlier, because I thought really I wanted to save them up for now so that our conversation could be fresh. And I think the point I'd love to start with really is the beginning. Turning the clock back to 65 or early 66, I'm not quite sure. Where did this offer to be in the Antonioni film come from? How did it come about? And I'm curious to know where you were in your career at that stage.
Golly, okay.
Because you big questions, lots of them, but I think you'd made your mark on the stage. You'd already made films, but Blow Up seems to be quite a significant...
Well, for me it was certainly very significant. I'd already made Morgan with Carol Rice directing. I don't know, I guess, you know, the word goes around different ways now, even faster, all over the place, and internet. But the word used to get around in those days too, so I think probably Carlo Ponti had heard word via Italy, and also I've no idea, but maybe the word it got around, I spoke Italian, not that I spoke Italian in the film.
Right.
I don't know really why,
yes,
but I guess I was being considered as an actress who was rather nice on screen.
Right, that's a way of saying it. Presumably you were well aware of Antonioni's reputation when the offer came.
Aware of his films.
Yes.
Is my microphone working? Can you hear me?
Good.
Good. Okay.
You were aware of his films.
Well, I'm not aware. I'd seen, yes, and I was married to Tony Richardson, so you know it was the film. I mean, Antonioni was still one of the. Well, still, I guess Blow Up was perhaps one of his peaks, because he'd made those extraordinary films with Monica, and he was still with Monica when he sent word via Ponti and all the other ways that I was to be in his film, which I was thrilled to pieces about, absolutely thrilled. But I was surprised it wasn't Monica again who would be the character, but it was set in London. So I guess that's why.
Yeah. When you...
I was very lucky it wasn't Julie Christie, it was me.
When you got the role, how much did you know about it? Or did the name of Antonioni in itself, was that enough to say, I'll do it?
Of course, yes.
Yeah. And he's notorious for keeping his cards fairly close to his chest in terms of the storyline, the script. Details. As far as you can recall, was that the case? To what extent, when you started the film, did you really know the storyline and what you were in for?
Probably my memory's gone a bit hazy on all of that, because, as you say, it's 50 years ago. But the thing that I do remember is that I was ready to do whatever he told me to do. And that's what he wanted.
Yeah.
So it turned out good for him and fabulous for me.
Good. Interesting that you say that. about taking instruction from him,
Yes.
taking direction from him.
Well, I learned that from my husband, Tony
Yeah.
Richardson, because when Carol Rice asked me to play this wonderful part in Morgan, A Suitable Case for Treatment, Tony explained to me that one of the huge differences in film was that you must follow what the director wants, because if you don't, even if you were right in whatever it was that you were disputing, even if you were right, it couldn't help the film. It would be bad for the film. It would not lead to any kind of achievement whatsoever. And so he drilled into me, you do what the director wants.
Do as you're told, yeah.
Well, do what he wants.
Do what he wants,
not so much do what you're told.
To
do
what
what
extent
did
Antonioni give you specific directions? Can you recall how it was
Yes,
to be on
it was a
set
bit
with him?
like a dance choreographer. I danced for a long time. I studied classical ballet from the time I was 5 with the Ballet Rambert. And I had to stop when I was 14 because I was taller than my mother by then, and she was already 5'8", and I couldn't see my head in the mirror. So, in despair, I had to give up my dreams of becoming a classical dancer. But because I'd studied, I understand the value of understanding movement and space.
Very interesting.
Well, yes, because that's...
I watched Blow Up Again Saturday just to get in the mood for today and refresh my memory on it.
Yes.
I was very struck by how relatively few lines you had, but how strong a presence you had in the film. And just looking at it very analytically, I saw just how many gestures, how many movements you made.
Well, not many, because I was like that.
Well, briefly you were like that. No, but there's one scene where you're getting very tense and very wired and want to get that film back from David Hemmings. Yes. And the way you pace and the hand gestures, I was asking...
The pacing, that's entirely Antonioni.
Yeah.
Every movement, entirely Antonioni. That's why I feel it's legitimate to speak about my having, literally, not just studied from afar, but actually trained.
Interesting.
In classical
you knew
dance.
how to take directions from a choreographer.
Well,
very much
from
so.
Anybody.
Yes,
but most directors don't tell you those things.
They expect you to second guess it?
No, they're just not interested,
okay.
I guess. It's not their focus, it's not what they're looking for. What was thrilling about Antonioni was that he would say something quite simple, and I remember in one scene he told me something he wanted. Of course, I spoke Italian, so I didn't need to have it translated, which is a big bonus. And it was a scene where there's a moment where you think you're supposed to think that she is being seduced very happily. And I guess I think it was the camera operator or lighting cameraman, I can't remember, who asked him a question, and his reply was, well, she'll either get it or she won't. And I thought, that's brilliant philosophy. And of course, it made me feel very relaxed. Yeah. Because I didn't feel he'd be tormented if I didn't get it. I'd do my best to get it. Yeah. He wouldn't be pacing up and down, God, what a great mistake I made asking Vanessa to play this role. He wouldn't. He'd be philosophical about it.
And would work around it.
And would work around it whatever way. Yeah. As it happened, I got it, but...
Interesting.
Yeah. But it was that precision, the precision of what kind of orange is next to another kind of colour, perhaps quite close to orange. How much orange is close to that colour? How far away, what is the spatial distance between that orange colour,
Yeah.
and plane of colour, and something else that's somewhat to the background, somewhat to the left. To him, it wasn't somewhat to the left. It was where it had to be,
precisely where it
as
had
if
to
it
be.
was being painted. It was in no way pictorial, had nothing to do with telling the story. British technicians, craftsmen, designers are brilliant at realism, are very brilliant, in fact, probably the most brilliant, always have been, of sociological detail in design and props, costume, etc. But it's story-driven. You're acting a story for the camera.
Right.
It's not, and I don't know quite how to explain the difference of communication. That's a completely different kind of communication than Antonioni's.
Well, so much is hinted at, suggested in his film.
Yes, and so much up to you, can you get it?
And what you say about space, presumably it's not just objects on the set, the art direction of that, but it's also the spaces around between the actors, and the movement, scale of the actor to the set, which I guess is very much the case. Perhaps we're even more conscious of that in the park than in the studio, because you dominate two key elements of the film, which is when you're in the park with the unknown figure, David Hemmings is photographing you, that is a key, absolutely key scene, and then the duet, so to speak, back in the studio. But thinking of the park, one is very aware of the space and figures in that landscape, and often small figures in big landscape. I don't know to what extent, when you were shooting, you were conscious of what the end result would be.
I was very conscious in the studio, but not outside. It's harder, much harder.
What made that more difficult? Just
well, it's a very huge space.
Because of this, yes,
and I didn't ever ask to, and I was never asked to either by Antonioni. I never asked, could I look through the camera, which sometimes you want to, because you kind of want to get just a quick idea for a moment of the kind of space.
How he's
it's
building
really
the picture.
important. Today's films and today's actors and actresses are still being used in the main. And with some wonderful results, but in the main, like, it's all about the story and the characters. And if you think about it, all the award ceremonies are entirely based on not only, but really, on the fame of the celebrities who are in the film or watching it. And I'm sorry, I rebel against that. And of course, all us actors are very aware, and we thank the crews and the cinematographers and the designers, let alone the directors, for their work. But it's still, for people like me, you can still read, Dougie Slocum celebrated, I think it was in the Princess Anne. Are we in the Princess Anne or are we in the David Keane? I'm not sure. Keane. I spoke at the celebration for him about 5 years ago. He's just died. There's really, in Antonioni's kind of cinema, goodness me, you could really evaluate and deeply value the work of the different departments. But Anglo-American cinema doesn't. It does, of course.
Much more narrative-driven.
It's narrative-driven. It's completely narrative-driven. Goodness knows how that happened. Whereas you were talking about his philosophy and he was a very philosophical man. Yeah. I don't know if he'd ever studied philosophy at university, but he was thinking through all the time the shape a body makes.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't be happy if, for instance, to try and be practical, okay, I might think as Vanessa the actress, because I always was interested in movement and body language. And I think most of us English actresses are. Sorry, actresses, not actors. Okay.
One to Vanessa. Thank you.
Doing. For instance, as an actress, I would be thinking, well, how does so-and-so, this lady of somewhat elderly age, how will she sit in such and such a chair while she's being interviewed? And I'll come up with whatever I come up with. That was of no concern to Antonioni whatsoever. His entire interest was in what shape does that body make in that particular chair, and what kind of rhythm is coming from that body, and what is the relationship of the piece of furniture to that particular shape, and does that shape move at all, or only partly? Everything like that he would have taken into consideration.
Very visually precise, very visually precise.
Oh, very, very. And it was brilliant. It tells a different story a different way.
Exactly. It's a way of telling the story, because the movements, the body language imply moods. They add to the atmosphere. They build that pervading sense of things happening, but you're not quite sure what, but you intuit them. So you must have it must have been a wonderful opportunity, a wonderful learning curve for you to work with him.
Good thinking.
Yes. The first such, would it be fair to say you had never met a director, never worked with a director quite like him? Was he very different from previous experience?
Oh, yes, because my previous experience had been Carol, which was brilliant, surreal storytelling, the combination of David Mercer's script and Carol's comprehension and way of telling that story. Morgan, a suitable case for treatment. Black and white, of course, not colour. But, sorry, what was the point of the question?
Well, just about Antonioni being really a first for opening up the possibility of what a director could do.
And I came to think, I only worked with a few Italian directors after him. I longed to work with a whole number, but didn't, though I knew them. It's funny, the more you know film directors, the less they choose you. And probably because one sort of shows oneself to be a very opinionated, unmanageable sort of a person. But, I worked with an anarchist director called Tindo Brass. I did 2 films with him, and I thought there were touches of brilliance in both films. I acted in Italian dialect in those, not just Italian, and had to learn pages like overnight. Again, there wasn't a sort of script all ready to hand. You just did what the director wanted, and I did my best. And it was kind of anarchic and brilliant and so on. And I worked with Sciascia, who directed his own story, Sicilian. Just a small part, but I was very happy to do it. And of course, I worked with Zeffirelli. Only again a tiny, tiny part. Zeffirelli's a story-driven, a picture-driven, and beautiful pictures too. But
you were talking about
not
scripts that you had to learn,
and not social realism.
But can I ask you a little bit about Antonioni and his script and what you had to learn? I said earlier you were very present in the film. But didn't have so many lines. It was more speaking with gesture and body and so forth.
It's really much more interesting. Yeah.
Did you was there a shooting script that you were working to that you were
I don't
familiar
remember.
with?
I expect
No?
there probably was.
Yeah. And I was just wondering to what extent you were given your lines as you needed them, because they were relatively.
Well, I only needed whatever he said I needed.
Yeah.
For me, that was totally explicable, and the whole excitement was really, really listening, and watching him, and asking him, "Is that what you're after?" That delighted me. It infuriated some people, I think, but I was absolutely delighted by his approach.
Did he express
I can't remember anything about a page of dialogue, but I'm pretty sure there was.
There must have been, but I think to some extent it was being written in the morning, ready to be, the lines. There's very little dialogue in the film, so I think that it was being more or less improvised as it was.
Well, I worked with I forgot to mention another Italian director, and by way of illustrating, giving an illustrative counter-answer to your supposition or question. I worked with Elio Petri. Now, he was a brilliant Italian director, died far too young. And that's where Franco and I worked together after having done Camelot.
Yeah.
And Petri was over in sorry, I've got hiccups. Petri was over in the Antonioni area.
Yeah.
Because the film was about a painter. Petri chose Jim Dine. It was very, very told visually. In fact, to the point when Petri told me a story of, and I don't know why it was he who told me the story, but I thought it was very funny, to explain the difference between Italian cinema and American spirit cinema, which is perhaps not quite fair, but its description. He was telling me about Betty, what's her name? Fabulous Betty. Betty Davis. Okay, come on. And her walking onto an Italian film set. And I guess Petri must have been, in his early days as a runner or something. And she said, "Now, what are we going to do here?" And the director said, "You're going to do what I tell you to do." She was used to being a star and a very good actress. She was used to being brought on set. Now, what do you feel like doing, Betty?
How do you want to react to this moment? Yeah.
Yes, and what do you feel like doing? And Italian cinema is very much not about doing, and absolutely not about the star, however brilliant, coming on and saying what she's going to do. No, director. And that's how it should be, in my view. It should be. Yeah. It's not still to an amazing degree, but that's how it should be.
May I ask you, Antonioni had become closely associated with Monica Vitti.
Yes, indeed.
But I would ask the question about Blow Up, whether he willfully wanted actors who hadn't had a great deal of cinema exposure.
I never thought of that. That's obvious, isn't it?
Well,
I never thought of that. Well, I suppose he wanted English people because it was being set in what was called Ho, 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 Swinging London.
Yeah. It's got the name that spring, I think, didn't it? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. The press dreamed up something. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Talking about fashion,
it wouldn't have made.
Somebody was trying to sell something. I don't know.
But you'd made Morgan in the same year, hadn't you, in '66? But
maybe
hadn't had so much big screen exposure by then. So I wonder
I'd only done that one film.
I wonder if because Hemmings also was a fresh face on screen. So I would imagine that there was appeal,
His
to
first
Antonioni.
big role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it like? We've been talking about Antonioni, but what was it like working with David Hemmings? What was
It was fun.
the dynamic between you?
It was fun. Because we both ended up going to Los Angeles and shooting Camelot.
Oh, okay.
And he played the wicked Mordred, and I played the lovely but rather wicked Guinevere. And so we had quite a bit of fun there. Quite a bit.
But did you have fun making Blow Up with him as well?
No.
No, okay. Because they're clearly...
No kind of fun. I respected his work, but no.
Your parts created... the roles demanded a certain tension between you.
Absolutely.
And I don't know to what extent that...
Well, I don't know about him.
Switch
I know
on, switch
I was
off.
completely focused on trying to do what Antonioni wanted. You know, that's all engrossing. It's all demanding.
I'd love to have a recollection or two from you, if you have them, of the park itself, the mood of that place. I gather that Antonioni had seen many possible locations for the park
Marion
scene.
Park. I
Marion
wonder
Park,
if it still exists.
It still exists.
Does it?
I went just a few years ago, and
really?
it has the same. It has the curious
hawthorn
character, and one thing I was very aware of was the hillock, the raised part where most of the action happens,
sort of little plateau.
Is a curious kind of plateau, and I don't know whether it was. It doesn't seem like a natural form. I don't know if it was a burial mound or if it has some sort of strange history. But Antonioni clearly was very taken by the mood of that park. Of all the places he'd seen and he wasn't satisfied with, he arrives at Marion Park, feels a certain vibe around it. I mean, did you have any sense of place about
Absolutely
that
none.
park? No? Okay.
No. What I remember of the park is because of the film, not because of the park.
Well, I suppose...
Because in the film, this brilliant thing, and maybe he chose it out of an accident or not, planned, I don't know. But the brilliant thing is that you hear the trees and the bushes rustling.
Oh, it's...
all the
I agree with you.
time that you're up there. And it takes you into another dimension altogether.
It's, for me, that's one of the great soundtrack moments of film history, is the trees and bushes rustling and Blow Up.
Yes.
Do you have recollections of the studio where you shot the other very significant scenes, which had been a John Cowan studio, the photographer's studio, was quite significantly, I think, refurbished, tweaked and adjusted by Antonioni.
Well, I'm sure it was completely redesigned by Antonioni, and painting and everything he must have. I don't know because I wasn't there.
Oh yeah, it was.
What I do know is
changed.
spending hours at the hairdresser because he wanted my hair not only to be black, which it was dyed black, but he wanted some kind of a quiff, a white quiff. And no hairdresser in London, including Vidal Sassoon, knew how to do what he wanted. So he finally said, well, I guess we just got to have you black. And of course I wondered, why does he have to have me black?
Yeah.
Because I was blonde at the time. And I rather fancied myself blonde. I didn't fancy myself with black hair.
I wonder where
I wanted to do what he wanted.
White streak idea came from. But it's not like him to have to accept that he can't have his way with a visual detail, is it?
Well, I went back to the hairdressers so many times and to different ones. While they tried to do it today, they'd do anything, but not then for some reason.
While you're talking about
but
the
it's
hair,
the same idea as redoing a studio.
Yeah. Oh, he was fastidious about every detail. The studio was extensively redone.
All his films had specific colours.
But one thing one is conscious of in so many, certainly opening scenes of Blow Up, is how much of the colour is very restrained, so that when he adds colour, those
really?
additions...
I've forgotten that.
Well,
Right.
you must see it again.
Yes.
I hope you'll be prompted to by this
Yes.
evening.
Well,
But
alas, I won't be
there are
around for the
moments-
next anniversary.
Yeah.
Perhaps I can come.
Yeah.
You'll invite me for a drink. And
We'll organise a
we
screening for you. But
we can see
there are
it.
moments where deliberately chosen points of colour just seem to sing out, precisely because you've got used to the understatement of his colour. I mean, it's meticulously orchestrated.
That's specific to that film.
Yes.
Completely specific.
Am I right in thinking it was his first colour film? Someone from the audience? No, but
No.
he'd made so many movies in black and white, which is its own discipline, that one could see. I mean, he took very easily to the colour. I was going to ask you, you're talking about your hair and the styling of the look. I know from Verushka that, for instance, that the cat suit she wears in the pop party scene at the end was her own. The clothes, who styled you? Were any of the garments, the shirt, was any of it your own?
No,
Or it was all...
No,
all...
it was all designed by, I think it was a designer called Jocelyn Rickard.
Yes, yeah. But so she chose the wardrobe. I mean, she designed, obviously, the very stylized clothes for the fashion shoot sequence.
Well, I don't know if she did, but...
I believe she did. I think
but they were more selections from the Quant shows.
I think she'd taken what she saw from different...
Okay, well, I expect you're right.
Styled them
I
in a
just
slightly
thought-
more exaggerated way.
Okay.
One thing I noticed when rewatching the film, no pun intended, you're wearing your watch over your shirt sleeve in the film, and I was struck by it. I thought, what an unusual, actually very chic little fashion. Do you remember that?
I remember that, and I can't remember, you can invent things in your head. That's a detail that in my mind I'm thinking Antonioni said, put it, because I went to him to approve everything.
Yeah.
Whether it was the clothes or the hair or anything. Is this what you want? And he'd change something or whatever.
Oh, okay.
And in my mind, but I may be inventing this, the fact that I even think I might be probably is proof that I am. I don't know.
It was quite a few years ago.
I think I have a feeling that it was his touch to put it over the...
Well, what you've told us of him so far would suggest that no detail escaped his attention, and he would likely have instructed that.
But no, I can't tell you. Did I have earrings or not? I've no idea. I mean, literally everything was what he wanted.
Right.
I wasn't too happy with my shirt and my skirt. Because I was self-conscious about my figure. I didn't think my figure was very good. I'd had 2 children, and I felt a little bit self-conscious of this area.
You look lean and fit. One would never have known.
Well, I look lean and fit because I was basically lean and fit, but I had 2 children, and I'd fed them and done the things a mother is there to do and loves to do.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit, I'd rather wear the shirt outside, but he wants it inside. Okay.
Yeah. Which made you a little uncomfortable when you took the shirt off, or was that...
Oh, no, I wasn't uncomfortable.
You were comfortable
about
enough
that,
because you trusted him?
I would have been very uncomfortable if he'd said, I do want to see your bosom.
Yeah.
I'd have said, but my bosom's awful and I really can't bear you to see it. But
like so much in the film,
things
were suggested rather than stated, which I think is part of it.
Well, it's a nice touch of character, isn't it?
Yeah.
That she's taken off everything, but is still going like that. It's a kind of odd English quirk.
English reserve, yeah. Well, it probably wouldn't have got past the censors. I mean, the film shocked because of Jane Birkin's nudity, I think, and...
Oh yes.
Today we take such things very, very much for granted.
Great friends later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that. But it's a brilliant film. It's an absolutely brilliant film.
I agree with you, of course.
The later I've seen it, at first when I saw it, I just thought, oh, you're so brilliant, you're so brilliant, you're so brilliant, and I couldn't put into words because obviously I had to do a lot of publicity.
Yeah.
And it sold on my name, and his name, I mean, but amongst the actors. Yeah. When I have seen it a few years on and a few years on and a few years on,
I think it gets better and better.
Exactly, yes.
And I ask myself why. I mean, do you ask yourself the same question and
of
say,
course,
what are those qualities?
I consider myself to be a serious person.
Then what words might you find to give a hint of what you find magical about, special about Blow Up?
Well, I don't know about magical because it comes out of a living human being telling a lot of living human beings what he's after and will they do this and this and this and this. So it's, unless you like to think of Antonioni as a kind of Prospero, which is fair enough if he did, because after all he did have whole streets painted a colour that he was after, but sort of magician. But I think of him as a supremely cultured person of the kind I just worship, but severely, not flamboyant, just contained and thinking and considering and then saying, yeah, it's okay either way. You know, somebody else could say, well, it's okay either way, and you'd think, you silly fool, can't you make up your mind?
Yeah.
But not with Antonioni. It's okay either way would come out of a depth of thinking. Yeah. And you'd know, okay, it is okay either way. You know, it's a level that I just wonder at.
You're defining the personality who permeates the film, in a sense.
Well,
and you're right. No, it makes sense. And there isn't... people say they're longueur. It's a film about boredom, about nothing happening. Well, I think they're completely missing the point. In a way, maybe it is.
But I think completely missing the point.
But there isn't a wasted second in Blow Up. Everything, every quiet moment, every stretched moment contributes to the building.
Well, I would be sorry, or let's say, that sounds horribly patronizing. I'd feel compassionate for people who say that it's long or boring or whatever. I would feel compassionate because if there's one of the things that I detest about the prevailing way that films are marketed, not all films are made. There's some awfully good films being made, I must say. Some awfully good films being made. But the way they're being marketed, it's entirely based on a sort of grand guignol passion for not spending more than half a second on anything. And most of that anything will be blood splurting all over everything.
Well,
we live
cars
in a world turning over,
greatly
cartwheels 5 times, bombs going off.
I was going to say, we live in a world of greatly reduced attention spans. And
or diminished intelligence of a frightening degree.
Maybe the one goes with the other, I don't know. But
I don't know.
Well, Vanessa, thank you.
Have we come to the end? Is that why we're clapping?
Is there an end? Is it? No. Maybe they've had enough of us.
Have you had enough of us? Fair enough.
But I think a couple of things. We've talked about Blow Up. We've talked about things that happened 50 years ago. And thank you enormously for bringing them back to life for us. I'm very curious to know, you've had a rich and dense career, which is far from over. What are you working on now?
No, it's not modesty. I'd love to talk for half an hour about the films, the little films that my little company has been making at Twickenham Studios and in Bosnia. and most recently in East Jerusalem, the West Bank and Gaza, for the eye hospital work of St. John of Jerusalem, which is an extraordinary 1,200-year-old order, which is dedicated
to documentaries.
Documentaries, yeah. I hope we can make another feature, but they're documentaries which really engaging me, and the other one is working with my Greek friends in Médecins Sans Frontières on and for the refugees.
Oh, very actual.
Very actual, yes. Yeah, because the European Union has made a disgusting, disgraceful agreement with Turkey, meaning all the European governments. And while not all as bad as each other, because thanks to Angela Merkel and Germany, they've opened up and really welcomed a large number. But I don't intend to speak politically, only to say that the whole point about humanitarian conventions is that you don't put your politics first, you put human beings first, and how to give them care and assistance and protection, and if they're young, develop the opportunity to develop, which means health and education. And that's where I belonged for a long while, is in the humanitarian human rights sector. So that's what I'm up to. Very good,
very good. Well, look, can I ask, does the spirit of Antonioni sit with you and others?
Oh, I wish I could go to him. I wish I could go to Carol Rice too.
Yeah.
I wish. You know, you do find, I mean, I'm now 79. It's a long time ago since Blow Up. And I miss the people who I used to rely on to share thoughts and feelings with. Of course, I've still got some friends who I feel close to, for their thoughtfulness, and they're also working in the same profession. They're not always actors.
Well, and you have a huge audience of people who you have touched with your work. So you've connected.
That would be lovely.
Very much so, Vanessa. Gosh. Very much so. A huge thank you, please. I think we need it now. Vanessa, thank you so much.